Hey, I'm Martin from Zuplo, and this is API Monetization 101, a series where we break down everything that goes into charging for an API product. If you're building an API and you're thinking about charging for it, the first thing you need to figure out is what exactly are you going to count, and what happens when someone uses more than they've paid for. That's metering and enforcement, and it's the foundation of any API monetization setup, and that's what we're covering in this video today. So at its core, metering is counting things, but things is doing a lot of work in that sentence. The obvious answer is counting API requests. A customer makes a call, you increment a counter, simple. But not all requests cost you the same amount of money to do. So think about wrapping an LLM. A request that generates 50 tokens and one that generates 4,000 tokens are not the same thing. Charging per request is going to penalize light users, but it's also going to subsidize heavy users. If you think about serving files, a 1 kilobyte JSON response and a 500 megabyte video download are not the same thing and shouldn't count the same way. That's why modern metering systems don't just count requests, they track usage dimensions, the specific unit that correlates with your cost to serve. So let's take a look at 3 specific metering patterns so you can see how they differ. Pattern 1. Request counting. Every API call increments a counter by 1, and this is the baseline. Use it when your requests are roughly uniform in cost or when simplicity matters more than precision. Pattern 2. Token metering. This is essential for AI applications. Your backend calls the model, gets a token count back, and reports it. Now you can price like OpenAI does per 1,000 tokens with different rates for input and output if you want to get really granular with it. Pattern 3, data transfer. This just tracks bytes, useful for file storage APIs or CDNs or any service where the bandwidth is the real cost driver. The pattern is always the same. A meter watches for a specific event type, extracts a numeric value, and then aggregates it however you tell it to do it. You control the events, the system does the math. Okay, let's talk about features. Meters track raw usage, but customers don't buy meters, they buy features. And a feature connects a meter to your product catalog. It's the thing you put on your pricing page, and that's what gets enforced at the gateway level. Metered features link to a meter. When you include one in a plan, you set a quota for it. So something like how much usage is included, or whether there's a hard or soft limit, and what happens when you go over it. Static features don't have any meters, they're just Boolean. You either have access or you don't. So things like priority support, access to premium endpoints or beta features, those would be static features. Usage data is valuable, but the real question is what happens when a customer hits their limit? Enforcement is where metering connects to your API gateway. When a request comes in, the enforcement layer checks 4 things. 1, does this customer have an active subscription? 2, do they have an entitlement for the meters this endpoint requires? 3, is their balance sufficient to make this request? And 4, is their payment current? If any of those checks fails, then the request is going to get rejected before it even reaches your backend. And this is important. Enforcement happens at the gateway, not in your application code. Okay, so let's talk about limits. Hard limits versus soft limits. When a customer exhausts their quota, you've got 2 options. Hard limits block the request and the customer gets a 429 response. Their integration stops working until the next billing cycle anyway, or at least until they upgrade. And this protects you from runaway usage, but it creates a kind of harsh experience. Soft limits allow the request, but they flag it as an overage. So the customer keeps working and then you bill them for that extra usage at the end of the period. It's definitely friendlier for sure, but it carries the extra risk of customers racking up charges that they can't or won't pay for, or that might actually end up being kind of unexpected. Most mature API products, however, do use both. Typically, you'll find hard limits on free plans, and you'll find soft limits on any kind of paid plan with overages. That's the foundation. Meters track usage, features connect them to your product, and enforcement acts on those limits at the gateway. The full blog post that explains this in even more detail is linked in the description down below, along with all of the examples that I showed in here. And if you are keen to try this out for yourself, then Zuplo's monetization features are in private beta right now. The link to sign up for that is also in the blog post. The next in this series, we're going to cover plans and phases, how to structure pricing tiers, free trials, and automatic transitions between each of those. I'll see you in the next one.